a lot of what Tom has already said, some of the things that I would have said, that it's important for us, all stakeholders, to work together. When Tom was talking about, we were together yesterday, we seemed to spend an awful lot of time together, but we were together yesterday. The group he was talking about was Mass Partners. Mass Partners brings together on a monthly basis the School Committee Association, the Superintendent Association, the two teachers unions, the principals associations, et cetera. And, we go through a whole host of things to see where we may have common ground. We try to work out where we might have differences, and we try to come together in a way where we can advocate on behalf of all of our constituents and in terms of the children that we serve across the Commonwealth. That's why Tom talked about all the paperwork on the DESE website, et cetera, around all of the mandates, requirements, the paperwork that everyone has to fill out. We were having a little chat yesterday about, Tom was talking about the volume that superintendents have to fill out. And I did remind Tom at that particular point that most of the data that the superintendents get in terms of the required paperwork comes from the paperwork that their classroom teachers did. But my role has significantly changed over the years. Anyone who knows my history, knows that I was a classroom teacher for a great number of years, that I was a vice president of the Brockton Education Association for a dozen years, and I was very much entrenched in what we might call a very traditional mode of unionism. One where I was extremely focused on the traditional elements of wages, hours, and working conditions. I was grievance chair for a number of years as well. So I have a great understanding in terms of the contract. And I was looking at the contract this morning. The contract in Brockton, is it's quite thick, and it's hundreds of pages long, and a lot of things are spelled out. But over the years, as I began to work with teachers and saw the concerns that they had around student achievement, I knew that we as union leaders had to broaden the work that we have traditionally done. And that includes allowing our teachers to come to the forefront, to know what's best in the classroom, rather than have it done unto them. And I took that very seriously. And one of the things that I want you to take away from here today, especially those in the union front, there are going to be times when collaboration is difficult, and you're going to be right out there front and center. I was, when Tim Fitzgerald helped facilitate some interest-based bargaining in Brockton, the union was front and center. People knew we were collaborating, and everything that went out to the members went through the union president, et cetera, front and center. We developed an expanded learning time school in Brockton. Again, the union was front and center because we had to come up with a memorandum agreement and went through stipulations on how that would be done. When I was leaving Brockton a couple of years back, a few years ago now, they were in a very much a crisis situation in terms of over 400 layoff notices going out, and knowing that around 90 or 100 of them were real. And I did not want to leave Brockton as a union leader knowing I didn't do everything that I could do on behalf of my members, but on behalf of the students of that city. The city I really do love so well. And so I brought my team together. And I said, I cannot go out the door, and I can't leave Kim Gibson, who's now the president, down back, faced with the reality of losing X number of teachers. So the union took the forefront. Management did not. We took the bull by the horn. A very small group of us put together a proposal that saved the city $1.7 million potential savings, which brought back 45 of the 90 teachers that were going to be laid off. Very, very difficult conversation, but a conversation that had to be had. But again, it was the union who took it, went to management, worked it out, did what we needed to do by using the contract making some deferrals, etc. But I raised that because the union was out there in the forefront, and people knew that we were collaborating and knew that we're working hand in hand with the administration on these issues. But there are going to be times where we have to say to our staff or to our members, the union, that we recognize that they know best and that they have the solutions. And we as unionists have to be able to, in some senses, let go and allow that to occur. And a perfect example of that is what happened at Brockton High School. Brockton High School, as you know, has been recognized nationally on many fronts. They've been chronicled in the New York Times. They've received multiple awards. And a few years ago, a group of teachers came together on a Saturday, and they asked themselves one very, very difficult question. And it centers on some of the work that you guys are doing now. And that very difficult question was, is this the best we can do? And after a lot of thought, they came up with the answer. And I think we all knew what the answer was. No, it was not. There's much more that could be done. These teachers continued to meet on their own time. And eventually, as all things do, things filtered down to the union. And there was a very tough moment there where the union had to make a decision. You had teachers doing very difficult work on their own time for no additional compensation. And the question was, do we become involved in this project? Do we let it, in some ways, maybe flounder because they need something behind it to move it a little more forward a little bit more? Or do we take this on? But do we take it on by being at the forefront? Or do we just take a back seat to it, be involved, but not put our face on it? I chose the latter. In many of the stories, you know, some of you may know Dr. Susan Zakowitz, who is always out there championing Brockton High School. And she recently retired. But when she goes around the country talking about this, she's always talking about our teachers. She's not talking about herself, and she's not talking about the Brockton Education Association. She talks about the great work that the teachers did. So what happened? I did get a little bit involved because I said, you know what, this is unbelievable work. And I did think that they should be compensated to some extent for it. So I worked it out, you know, with the administration that we formed a restructuring committee at Brockton High where there would be some compensation. And then we let the teachers just simply take off. Dr. Zakowitz came to me and said, you know, I wanted to be upfront with you on where we're going on this initiative and what the teachers are talking about. She says, we want to do a literacy across the curriculum program. And every single teacher in that building, regardless of subject, is going to be responsible for teaching literacy to the students they serve. Now, for some ELA teachers, not a significant change. But for phys ed, for gym, for some of the industrial arts areas, and many other programs, this led to some significant changes in their working conditions. And the question then became, how does the union react when the union starts getting phone calls over changes in working conditions? Changes around faculty meetings, changes around the way they run their daily classroom, etc. I pulled my executive committee together and I said, we're going to have people call and want to file grievances. And you know what? Some of the things they're going to ask us to do will be violations of the contract. There is no question about it. But how do we respond when we know the ultimate goal is to improve student achievement? And our response was, and part of this came from me being a reading teacher, and it was a literacy project, but part of it was when I got those calls, And what BHS and the administration may not know, although some of them are sitting here today, so they do know, I got dozens of calls. And when I say dozens, I mean dozens. Wanted me to take some action on a variety of issues. And each one of those phone calls, either myself or one of my executive committee members held significant conversation with the individuals calling, just to simply say, this is about literacy, this is about student achievement, and we need to do what we can do to accommodate at the school level this particular project. And if you wish, if this project is a failure and you wish me to do something beyond, to talk about working conditions and other things, file a grievance, etc., I will do that because I have a duty, a responsibility to represent them. But let's see what happens here. Just let it go for a while. And as we know, what happened? Student achievement increased significantly at Brockton High. Graduation rates are great for an urban center. And it was all because an initiative led by our teachers, not by the BEA. And what the BEA decided to do is not be a stumbling block to reform. And we decided, let it go and see what happens. And the results were tremendous. And I mention that because you're going to have those moments as you work through. I think it's great you're all working here together. I applaud you. But a lot of what you're doing here is front and center. And as things bubble up from your teachers, remember, those classroom teachers are the experts. They know what's best. They did at Brockton High, and we allow them to go forward with it, and they reach significant heights in terms of the outcomes there. Now, on the state level, I won't go. I know a lot of you are familiar with the work that MTA is doing around teacher evaluation, working hard with DESE on the rollout of retail, etc. So the union is front and center and heavily involved in these initiatives. So I just say to you, whether you're front and center, such as we are at the MTA, and whether you are at the local level, or whether it's bubbling up from the grassroots level from your teachers, take reform seriously, and remember that your classroom teachers are really the champions of the work that needs to be done.